Veyla Kass stood before the Grand Assembly Hall for the last time. The towering crystal walls reflected her image back at her, a reminder of everything she was about to lose. She was a Zenthari, a member of one of the most respected species in the entire Galactic Coalition. Her people were known across the stars for their brilliant minds and scientific achievements. But today, none of that mattered. The Council of Elders sat in their high chairs, looking down at her with cold eyes. Their robes shimmered with the traditional colors of scientific excellence, colors she had once worn with pride. Now those same symbols felt like weapons pointed at her heart. Elder Morton spoke first, his voice echoing through the chamber. Veyla Kass, you have brought shame to our people. Your theories about dimensional physics are dangerous and unfounded. You claim that faster-than-light travel can be achieved through methods that contradict everything we know. This is not science. This is fantasy. Veyla wanted to argue, to show them her calculations one more time. She had spent 15 years developing her theories, running simulations, checking every formula 1,000 times. But she knew it was useless. They had already made their decision before she even entered the room. Your credentials are hereby revoked, another elder announced. You are no longer recognized as a scientist of the Zenthari people. You are expelled from our academic institutions. You will leave our world within 3 days. The words hit her like physical blows. Everything she had worked for, gone in an instant. She bowed her head, not in agreement, but because she could not bear to look at their faces anymore. 3 days later, Veyla found herself on a transport ship heading away from her home. She watched through the small window as her planet grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among billions. She had packed only what she could carry: her research data, a few changes of clothes, and the small amount of credits she had saved. Her first stop was the Mirundi Collective, a civilization of telepathic beings known for their open-mindedness. Surely they would understand, she thought. She presented her research to their scientific council, explaining how dimensional folds could revolutionize space travel. The head Mirundi touched her mind gently, reading her thoughts and emotions. When he pulled back, his mental voice was sad but firm. Your passion is genuine, but your mind shows signs of obsessive thinking. We believe you have become too attached to an impossible dream. We cannot support this work. Veyla left the Mirundi world feeling more alone than ever. But she did not give up. She traveled to the Corathi homeworld next. The Corathi were masters of logic and mathematics. If anyone would appreciate her calculations, it would be them. She waited for weeks to get an appointment with their evaluation committee. When she finally presented her work, they listened in silence. Then they ran her numbers through their quantum computers. The lead Corathi's mechanical voice delivered the verdict. Probability of success: 0.003%. Resource allocation for such minimal chance: illogical. Request denied. From there, Veyla went to the Draxum Empire. The warrior race had recently started investing in scientific research to complement their military might. She thought perhaps they would see the strategic value of instant travel across the galaxy. The Draxum commander laughed in her face. You come here, a disgraced scientist with no backing, and ask us to fund your fantasy? We build weapons that work, not dreams that fail. Get out before I have you thrown out. Station after station, world after world, the answer was always the same. No, not interested. Too risky. Impossible. Waste of time. Some were polite, others were cruel, but the result never changed. Veyla's credits dwindled. She sold her extra clothes, then her personal data pad, then even her research storage device, keeping only basic copies of her work. She took whatever jobs she could find: cleaning, sorting cargo, repairing equipment. Work that required no credentials, no background checks, no questions about her past. Finally, she arrived at Frontier Station Epsilon. It was a dying place at the edge of known space, where the galactic powers had given up trying to maintain order. The station's corridors were dirty and poorly lit. The air recyclers made strange noises that suggested they might fail at any moment. This was where people came when they had nowhere else to go. Veyla got a job in the waste reclamation sector. Every day, She cleaned the recycling units that processed the station's garbage. Her hands, once used to delicate laboratory instruments, now handled filth and broken machinery. The other workers barely spoke to her. When they learned she was Zenthari, they kept their distance. Everyone knew the Zenthari did not mix with lower species, so what was she doing here? At night, she would return to her tiny quarters, barely large enough for a sleeping mat and a small storage locker. She would pull out her battered datapad and review her calculations. The numbers still made sense. Her theory was sound. She knew it in her bones. But knowing the truth and convincing anyone else of it were two different things. 6 months passed this way. 6 months of degrading work, of loneliness, of watching her dreams fade a little more each day. Veyla began to wonder if the elders had been right. Maybe she was chasing an impossible fantasy. Maybe it was time to accept reality and give up. But something stubborn inside her refused to quit completely. Not yet. Not while there was still a chance, however small, that she might be right and the entire galaxy might be wrong. The Pioneer docked at Frontier Station Epsilon on a cold morning by station time. Captain Jake Morrison stepped off the ship and stretched his arms above his head. The station looked rough even by Frontier standards. Rust stains marked the walls, and half the lights flickered or did not work at all. But it had supplies, and that was what mattered. Jake was a tall man with short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too many impossible situations. He had been commanding the Pioneer for 3 years now, exploring the edges of known space. It was dangerous work that most species considered beneath them. But humans were new to the galaxy, barely 10 years since first contact, and they had to prove themselves somehow. "Captain, I've got a supply list ready," said Lieutenant Amy Carter, his second in command. She was a sharp woman with red hair pulled back in a tight bun. "We need fuel cells, food supplies, and replacement parts for the navigation system." "Good. Let's split up and get this done quickly," Jake replied. "I don't like the feel of this place." The crew scattered through the station to handle their tasks. Jake decided to check out the lower levels personally. He had learned that the best deals were often found in the forgotten corners of Frontier stations. As he walked down a dimly lit corridor, he heard voices ahead. "Look at this, boys. A Zenthari cleaning toilets. How the mighty have fallen." Jake rounded the corner and saw 3 Draxum mercenaries surrounding a thin female alien. She wore dirty work clothes and kept her eyes down, trying to ignore them. The Draxum were big creatures, each one twice her size, with thick scaled skin and mean grins. "Come on. Tell us what you did to end up here," one of them pushed. "Steal something? Kill someone? Or are you just stupid?" The Zenthari woman said nothing. She tried to move past them, but they blocked her path. Jake felt something tighten in his chest. He had seen bullies before on Earth and now out here among the stars. They were the same everywhere. He walked forward with deliberate steps. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "I think the lady wants to be left alone." The Draxum turned to look at him. The largest one, clearly the leader, sneered. "A human. You're a long way from your little corner of space, soft skin. This doesn't concern you." "I'm making it my concern," Jake said. He kept his hands relaxed at his sides, but his posture was ready. "Walk away now, and we'll forget this happened." The lead Draxum stepped closer, using his height to try to intimidate Jake. "Or what? You'll fight all 3 of us? Humans are weak. Everyone knows it." Jake smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Maybe, but humans are also too stupid to know when they're beaten. We tend to fight anyway. Makes us unpredictable. Dangerous. So ask yourself, is bothering this woman worth finding out what a desperate human will do?" The Draxum studied Jake's face. Something in those calm, determined eyes made him reconsider. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy. They did not win many fights, but they never, ever backed down. And they fought dirty when they had to. "Whatever," the Draxum finally muttered. "She's not worth the trouble." He and his companions walked away, throwing angry looks over their shoulders. Jake turned to the Zenthari woman. Up close, he could see how exhausted she looked. Her skin, which should have been a healthy blue color according to what he knew of her species, was dull and gray. But her eyes, when she finally looked at him, were sharp and intelligent. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You did not have to do that." "Nobody should be treated that way," Jake replied. "I'm Jake Morrison, captain of the Pioneer. Have you eaten today?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Come on, let me buy you a meal. It's the least I can do." They sat in the station's cantina, a depressing place with dirty tables and food that barely qualified as edible. But it was warm, and the synthetic protein wasn't completely terrible if you didn't think about it too much. "I'm Veyla Kass," she said, picking at her food. "I suppose you're wondering what a Zenthari is doing on a station like this." "Only if you want to tell me," Jake said. "Everyone's got a story." So she told him about her research, her theories, the rejection by her people, and every other civilization she had approached. Jake listened without interrupting, which she found strange. Most people either dismissed her immediately or pretended to listen while clearly thinking about something else. "Dimensional fold travel," Jake said when she finished. "That's fascinating. What would you need to prove your theory?" Veyla blinked in surprise. "You believe me?" "I don't know enough about the science to believe or not believe," Jake admitted. "But I know that every major breakthrough in human history came from someone who was told their ideas were impossible. Powered flight, splitting the atom, faster than light travel. All impossible, until someone did it anyway." For the first time in months, Veyla felt a small spark of hope. This human, this member of a species the galaxy considered primitive, was treating her theories with more respect than the greatest scientific minds had shown. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud alarm. The station's emergency broadcast system crackled to life. "Attention all vessels. A civilian transport is caught in a gravitational anomaly in Sector 7. 300 lives on board. All ships capable of rescue operations, please respond." Jake pulled out his communicator. "Amy, you hearing this?" "Yes, Captain. Coalition rescue vessels are en route." "But..." Amy's voice hesitated. "Sir, I'm reading the data on that anomaly. It's a cascading gravitational well near a binary star. No ship can get close without being pulled in." Jake was already standing up. "What's the Coalition doing?" "They've issued evacuation protocols. They're telling the transport to abandon ship and use escape pods, but the pods won't make it out of the gravity well either. Captain, they're leaving those people to die." Jake's jaw tightened. He looked at the numbers on his communicator screen. The risk calculations were brutal. Any ship attempting rescue had less than a 20% chance of escaping the gravity well themselves. "Prepare the Pioneer for launch," he said. "Captain." Amy's voice was shocked. "Sir, the risk assessment." "I can read, Lieutenant. Prepare for launch. We're going in." Veyla stood up quickly. "You can't. The Coalition has run the numbers. It's suicide." Jake looked at her with those calm, tired eyes. "Maybe, but I didn't join the space program to watch people die because the math said helping them was too risky. 300 lives, Veyla. What's the point of all our ships and technology if we won't use them when it matters?" He started toward the docking bay, then paused and looked back. "Besides, humans are good at breaking rules. It's kind of our thing." Veyla watched him go, her mind racing. She understood the mathematics of the gravitational anomaly. The Coalition was right. Conventional rescue approaches would fail. But conventional approaches were all they knew. What if there was another way? What if someone thought differently about the problem? She ran after Jake. "Wait, I want to help. I think I might know a way to improve your chances." Jake stopped and turned. "You sure? This could go very wrong." "I've been wrong about many things," Veyla said, "but I'm very good at gravitational physics. And you saved me from those mercenaries. Let me return the favor." Jake grinned. "Welcome aboard, then. Let's go save some lives." As they rushed toward the Pioneer, Veyla felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Purpose. Someone was listening to her ideas. Someone was willing to take a chance. Maybe, just maybe, this strange human captain was exactly what she needed. What the galaxy needed. Behind them, the station's communications buzzed with panic and disbelief. The human ship was actually going to attempt a rescue. Everyone agreed on one thing. The humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Veyla was beginning to suspect they were both. The Pioneer launched from Frontier Station Epsilon with emergency clearance. Inside the bridge, the crew worked with focused intensity. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at the navigation console, her fingers flying over the controls. Danny Foster, the chief engineer, monitored the ship systems from his station below decks. Veyla stood near the captain's chair, watching the main view screen. The gravitational anomaly appeared as a swirling distortion in space, like a whirlpool made of starlight. In the center of it, the civilian transport tumbled slowly, its engines straining uselessly against the pull. "How long do they have?" Jake asked. 20 minutes before their hull starts to collapse, Amy replied. "Maybe 30 if they're lucky." "And how long before Coalition rescue arrives?" 45 minutes. "They won't get here in time." Jake nodded grimly. "Veyla, what are you thinking?" Veyla moved closer to the navigation display. Her mind was racing through calculations, seeing the problem in ways the Coalition computers never would. The anomaly has two gravitational sources creating interference patterns. Most ships would try to fight against the pull, but that uses too much energy. We need to work with the gravity, not against it. "Like surfing a wave?" Danny's voice came through the comm system. "Yes, exactly like that," Veyla said, surprised by how quickly the human understood. "If we enter at the correct angle and use the gravitational currents, we can spiral inward with minimal engine strain. But the timing has to be perfect." Amy looked worried. "Captain, this violates about 7 Coalition safety protocols. If we fail, we'll be pulled in too." "Noted," Jake said calmly. "Veyla, can you calculate the approach vector?" "I think so. Give me access to your navigation computer." Amy hesitated, then transferred control to Veyla's temporary station. It was highly irregular to give a civilian, especially a non-crew member, access to critical ship systems. But something in the captain's tone made her trust his judgment. Veyla's fingers moved across the controls. The Zenthari were naturally gifted with numbers, and despite her months of manual labor, her mind was as sharp as ever. She saw the patterns in the gravitational waves, the spaces between the pulls where a ship could slip through. "There," she said. "If we enter here and adjust our trajectory at these 3 points, we can reach the transport without being trapped." Jake studied the course she had plotted. It looked insane. They would be diving straight into the anomaly, riding the edge of the gravity well like a ship sailing the edge of a hurricane. One mistake and they would be crushed. "Do it," he said. The Pioneer changed course and accelerated toward the anomaly. On Frontier Station Epsilon, dozens of species watched on their monitors. They saw the human ship doing the impossible, attempting what every rational civilization had already declared suicide. As they entered the gravitational field, the ship began to shake. Alarms blared across the bridge. The hull groaned under the stress. Adjusting heading to Vector 2, Amy called out, her voice tight with concentration. She trusted the calculations, but trusting and experiencing were very different things. The ship banked hard, using the gravity itself to change direction. Veyla watched the readings, her heart pounding. They were still on course, but barely. The margin for error was razor thin. "Second adjustment point in 10 seconds, she said. Danny's voice came through from engineering. "Captain, the starboard stabilizer is showing stress fractures. If we push much harder, it's going to fail." "Can you compensate?" Jake asked. "I can try something that's definitely not in the manual." "Do it." Down in engineering, Danny Foster worked with desperate speed. He rerouted power from non-essential systems, shunted emergency reserves to the failing stabilizer, and did 3 things simultaneously that would have made Coalition engineers faint. The stabilizer held. Barely. "Second adjustment now," Veyla called. Amy executed the maneuver perfectly. The Pioneer twisted through space, following the invisible currents of gravity that Veyla had mapped. They were close now. The civilian transport was visible through the view screen, its hull showing signs of dangerous strain. "Third adjustment in 5 seconds, Veyla said. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. If she had miscalculated, they would all die here. 300 people on the transport, plus everyone on the Pioneer. The weight of those lives pressed down on her. "Trust yourself," Jake said quietly, noticing her tension. "You've got this." Something about his confidence steadied her. Third adjustment now. The Pioneer made its final turn and pulled alongside the transport. The two ships were now locked in the same gravitational spiral, spinning slowly toward destruction together. But they had bought themselves time. "Amy, magnetic grapples. Lock onto their hull," Jake ordered. "Grapples engaged. We have a solid connection. Danny, I need everything the engines have got. We're pulling both ships out. Captain, the combined mass is too much. We don't have the power to escape the gravity well while towing another ship." Jake smiled. "Then I guess we'll have to be creative. Veyla, is there a way to use the gravitational currents to slingshot us out?" Veyla's eyes widened. It was a brilliant idea, and completely insane. "Yes, if we dive deeper into the well and then release at the exact right moment, the gravity itself will throw us outward. But if we miss the release point by even a second, we'll pass the point of no return." "Better than sitting here," Jake said. "Plot the course." For the next 3 minutes, Veyla worked faster than she had ever worked in her life. She calculated trajectories, factored in the combined mass of both ships, and accounted for a dozen variables that Coalition safety protocols said should never be attempted. When she finished, she looked at Jake with wide eyes. "This is going to be very close," she said. "Story of my life," Jake replied. "Everyone hold on. Danny, be ready to give me full power on my mark." The Pioneer and the transport dove deeper into the gravitational anomaly. The forces trying to tear them apart grew stronger with every second. Hull plates screamed under the pressure. Warning alarms sang a chorus of imminent disaster. Veyla watched the countdown she had programmed. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. "Now!" she shouted. Jake hit the release for the magnetic grapples at the exact same instant that Danny pushed the engines to maximum power. The Pioneer and the transport shot outward from the gravity well like stones from a slingshot. The forces involved were so extreme that half the crew blacked out from the acceleration. When Veyla's vision cleared, she saw stars on the view screen. Normal stars, steady and unchanging. They had escaped. "Status of the transport?" Jake asked, his voice slightly slurred from the G-forces. Amy checked her sensors. "Intact. Some damage, but everyone's alive. They're hailing us, Captain. Put them through." A voice filled with emotion came over the speakers. "Pioneer, this is Transport Captain Yenny. I don't know what you just did, but you saved 300 lives. Thank you. Thank you. Just doing our job," Jake said. "Head to the nearest station and get your ship checked out. That was rough on both of us." As the transport limped away toward safety, Veyla sat down heavily in an empty chair. Her legs felt weak. She had done it. Her calculations had worked. She had proven, at least to herself, that thinking differently could solve impossible problems. But her moment of relief was short-lived. Amy turned from her console with a concerned expression. "Captain, we're being hailed by Coalition Command. They want us to return to Frontier Station Epsilon immediately. They're convening a formal hearing about our rescue operation." Jake sighed. "Let me guess. They're not calling to congratulate us." "No, sir. I'm seeing 17 separate safety violations flagged against us. They're talking about revoking our charter." Veyla felt her brief hope crumble. Of course, she should have known. The galaxy did not reward people for breaking rules, even when breaking those rules saved lives. She had learned that lesson the hard way. "It's my fault," she said quietly. "I'm the one who plotted that course. I'll tell them it was all my idea." Jake looked at her with something like respect. "You'll do no such thing. I gave the orders. This is my responsibility. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "I've been to these hearings before. Coalition bureaucrats love to complain, but at the end of the day we saved lives. They can't ignore that." But as the Pioneer set course back to Frontier Station Epsilon, Veyla was not so sure. She had seen what the galaxy did to people who challenged the established order. She had lived it. And now this human who had shown her kindness was going to face the same treatment because he had listened to her ideas. She made a decision then. If they were going to condemn Jake for breaking their rules, she would make them face her again. She would stand up and defend him, defend the approach that had saved 300 lives. Maybe they would not listen. They never did before. But this time she would not be alone. This time she had someone who believed in her. And that made all the difference. The hearing room at Frontier Station Epsilon was packed with representatives from a dozen different species. The Coalition Safety Commission had sent 3 senior officials to preside over the proceedings. They sat at a raised platform, looking down at Jake Morrison with expressions that ranged from disapproval to outright contempt. Jake stood in the center of the room, still wearing his work uniform. He had not bothered to change into something more formal. Veyla sat in the audience section, her hands clenched together in her lap. She wanted to be down there with him, but the officials had made it clear this hearing was for ship captains only. The lead official, a tall Corathi named Evaluator Kren, spoke in a flat mechanical voice. Captain Morrison, you are charged with 17 violations of Coalition safety protocols. These include unauthorized entry into a Class 5 hazard zone, performing unregistered gravitational maneuvers, exceeding maximum stress tolerances on your vessel, and risking your crew without proper authorization. How do you plead? Guilty on all counts, Jake said calmly. And I'd do it again. A murmur went through the crowd. The officials looked shocked that he had admitted everything so freely. You understand that these violations carry serious penalties? Another official asked, a Mirundi female named Adjudicator Vess. Your ship's charter could be revoked. Your crew could be barred from Coalition space. I understand perfectly, Jake said. But I also understand that 300 people are alive right now because we broke your rules. So you tell me which matters more, your paperwork or their lives. Evaluator Kren's mechanical face could not show emotion, but his tone became colder. The rules exist to protect everyone, Captain. What you did was reckless. You succeeded through pure luck, not skill. If every ship captain ignored safety protocols whenever they felt like it, chaos would result. It wasn't luck, Jake said firmly. It was careful calculation and expert piloting by my crew. Calculation by whom? The third official asked, a Zenthari elder named Magistrate Orvan. Your crew's training records show no one qualified in advanced gravitational physics. Veyla felt her breath catch. They were going to expose her involvement. She waited for Jake to throw her under the judgment of these officials, to save himself by blaming the disgraced scientist. Instead, Jake said something that shocked everyone. The calculations were mine. I've been studying gravitational mechanics for years. I saw an opportunity that your computers missed. It was a lie and not even a good one. But Jake delivered it with such confidence that for a moment, the officials seemed uncertain. Magistrate Orvan leaned forward. You expect us to believe that a human captain, from a species barely a decade into space exploration, understands gravitational physics better than our most advanced systems? I expect you to believe the evidence, Jake replied. 300 people alive, both ships intact, mission successful. Whether you like how I did it or not doesn't change those facts. Veyla could not take it anymore. She stood up from her seat. Stop! Everyone turned to look at her. The officials' expressions changed when they recognized her species and then her face. Magistrate Orvan's eyes narrowed. Veyla Kass, he said with cold recognition. The disgraced researcher. I should have known you would be involved in this disaster. It was not a disaster, Veyla said, walking forward despite the guard who tried to stop her. It was a success, and Captain Morrison is lying to protect me. I made the calculations. I plotted the course. If you want to punish someone for breaking your precious rules, punish me. The room erupted in whispers. Jake shot her a look that was both grateful and frustrated. He had been trying to shield her from this. Magistrate Orvan stood up from his seat. So the truth comes out. A failed scientist with discredited theories, working with reckless humans. This explains everything. Captain Morrison, you allowed an unauthorized civilian to access your ship's navigation systems. That alone is grounds for permanent revocation of your charter. She saved lives, Jake said hotly. More than your entire fleet was willing to attempt. She got lucky, Magistrate Orvan shot back. Just as you got lucky. Her theories were rejected by every legitimate scientific body in the coalition. She is a fraud, Captain. And you were foolish enough to listen to her. Veyla felt the old shame rising up, the weight of all the rejections and dismissals. But then she felt something else. Anger. Pure, burning anger at the injustice of it all. My theories are not fraud, she said, her voice shaking but strong. You rejected them because they challenged what you thought you knew. You rejected them because you were afraid of being wrong. But today, those theories saved 300 lives. That transport is docked at this very station right now. Those people are breathing, talking, living because I was right and you were wrong. One success does not validate years of discredited work, Magistrate Orvan said dismissively. Then let me prove it again, Veyla challenged. Give me the resources, give me the chance, and I will show you that my dimensional physics theories can work. I will revolutionize space travel for the entire galaxy. We will do no such thing, Magistrate Orvan said. This hearing is about Captain Morrison's violations, not your desperate attempts at redemption. The verdict is clear. Captain Morrison, your charter is hereby. Wait, Jake's voice cut through the room. Before you finish that sentence, I have something to say. The Coalition can take my charter if you want. You can ground the Pioneer and scatter my crew. But you can't change what we did. And you can't stop me from doing what I'm about to do next. He turned to face Veyla directly. Veyla Kass, I formally offer you the position of science officer aboard the Pioneer. Full access to our laboratory, full authority over research projects, and a partnership where your ideas are valued, not dismissed. What do you say? The room fell silent. Veyla stared at him in disbelief. He was offering her everything she had lost, even as his own career hung in the balance. Even as this tribunal was seconds away from destroying him. You don't have a ship anymore, she said quietly. They're taking your charter. Maybe, Jake said with a slight smile, but I'm willing to bet they won't. Because here's what the Coalition is going to realize. Humanity isn't going away. We're going to keep exploring, keep taking risks, and keep breaking your rules when those rules don't make sense. And if you ground one human ship for saving lives, you're going to have a diplomatic incident with Earth that nobody wants. He looked back at the officials. So here's my offer to you. Let this slide. Give us a warning, a fine, whatever makes you feel better. But let us keep flying. Because next time there's an impossible rescue, next time someone needs help that your protocols say is too risky, you're going to want humans around. We're the ones crazy enough to try. Evaluator Kren and Adjudicator Vess looked at each other uncertainly. Jake was right about one thing. Humanity was new to the Coalition, but they were backed by their entire species. Causing a major diplomatic incident over safety violations would be politically messy. Magistrate Orvan looked furious, but he was outvoted. After a long moment of tense silence, Evaluator Kren spoke. The Commission will issue a formal reprimand and a fine of 10,000 credits. Captain Morrison, you are forbidden from entering Class 5 hazard zones without explicit authorization for the next standard year. The Pioneer's charter will remain active, but you will be under observation. Any further violations will result in permanent sanctions. It was far less than they had threatened, and everyone in the room knew it. Jake had won, not through following their rules, but by making them afraid of the consequences of punishing him too harshly. Jake nodded. Understood. We'll pay the fine. As the officials dismissed the hearing, Jake walked over to Veyla. The crowd was dispersing around them, some giving them hostile looks, others seeming thoughtful about what they had witnessed. So, Jake said, about that science officer position. Offer still stands, even if we're broke and under investigation. Veyla felt tears threatening to fall, but she blinked them back. Why would you do this for me? You barely know me. Because everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves, Jake said simply. Because I think you're right about your theories, and the galaxy is wrong. And because my crew could use someone who thinks differently than everyone else. So what do you say? Veyla looked at this human who had stood up for her, who had lied to protect her, who had risked everything because he believed in giving people chances. She thought about her tiny quarters in the waste reclamation sector, about cleaning garbage for the rest of her life, about watching her dreams die slowly. Then she thought about a laboratory, about research, about proving to the entire galaxy that they had been wrong to reject her. Yes, she said, I accept. Jake grinned and extended his hand. Veyla took it and they shook on the deal in the human custom. Around them, the galaxy continued to doubt. But for the first time in years, Veyla felt hope burning bright inside her chest. The Pioneer departed Frontier Station Epsilon 2 days later. Veyla stood on the bridge as they pulled away from the station, watching it shrink in the view screen. Everything she had owned fit in a single bag. But she was not leaving as a failure this time. She was leaving as a scientist again. And this time she had allies who believed in her. 3 months had passed since Veyla joined the Pioneer crew. They were the best 3 months of her life in years. The ship's small laboratory had become her sanctuary, a place where her ideas were welcomed instead of ridiculed. Every morning she woke up with purpose, and every night she fell asleep with equations dancing in her mind. The crew had accepted her completely. Danny Foster spent hours with her in the lab, asking questions about dimensional physics with genuine curiosity. Amy Carter brought her coffee during late-night research sessions. Even the junior crew members treated her with respect, calling her Dr. Kass despite her lack of official credentials. But it was Jake who made the real difference. He checked on her progress regularly, not to pressure her, but to understand. He asked simple questions that often led to breakthrough moments. And he believed in her fully and completely even when the experiments failed. And there were failures. Many of them. The dimensional field generator she built kept collapsing. The energy readings were inconsistent. The mathematics worked perfectly on paper, but reality proved more stubborn than theory. Veyla sat in the laboratory late one evening, staring at her latest failed test results. The prototype generator sat on the workbench, cold and silent. She had been so sure this modification would work. Rough day. Jake's voice came from the doorway. Veyla looked up. The captain leaned against the frame, holding 2 cups of that terrible human coffee he was always drinking. He offered her one. Thank you, she said, taking the cup. The warmth felt good in her hands. I thought I had solved the stability problem. But the field collapsed again after only 3 seconds. Jake pulled up a chair and sat down beside her. 3 seconds is better than the 1 second you got last week. Progress is meaningless if I cannot achieve a stable field, Veyla said bitterly. Without stability, the dimensional fold will never work for actual travel. It will just be an interesting scientific curiosity. Einstein once said that failure is success in progress, Jake offered. Who is Einstein? A human scientist from a long time ago. Very smart guy. Changed how we understood the universe. And he failed a lot before he succeeded. Jake sipped his coffee. Look, I'm not a scientist, but I know that every great achievement looked impossible right up until someone figured it out. You'll get there. Veyla wanted to believe him, but doubt was a hard thing to shake, especially after so many years of rejection. What if the coalition was right? What if my theories are just impossible dreams? Then you'll have tried your best and learned something anyway, Jake said. But I don't think they were right. I think they were scared. Scared of change. Scared of admitting they might have missed something. Fear makes people reject new ideas, not logic. Before Veyla could respond, her computer beeped. New data was coming in from the sensor array they had deployed in the system they were currently surveying. She pulled up the readings and her eyes widened. These microfluctuations in space-time, she said excitedly. They are exactly what my theory predicted. Natural dimensional variations that standard coalition sensors would never detect. Jake leaned forward to look at the screen. Is this good news? Very good news. It means the theoretical foundation is sound. The problem is not the concept, it is the execution. I need more power, better containment, and She trailed off, her mind racing through possibilities. And what? Jake prompted. And materials I cannot get. The kind of exotic matter needed for stable containment does not exist in normal supply chains. The Coalition controls it strictly for their own research facilities. Jake smiled. Lucky for you, humans are good at finding things we're not supposed to have. Let me make some calls. Over the next week, Jake contacted old friends and called in favors. He reached out to Commander Lisa Hayes, who ran a human supply depot 3 systems away. Lisa was known for being able to acquire hard-to-find materials, no questions asked. When Jake explained what they needed, she whistled low. Jake, you're asking for military-grade exotic matter. That stuff is locked down tighter than a black hole. If I get caught moving it, they'll lock me up and throw away the key. I know, Jake said. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. This could change everything, Lisa. Faster than light travel that makes our current drives look like rowboats. There was a long pause. You really believe in this? I do. And more importantly, the scientist who designed it deserves a chance to prove herself. Another pause. When did you become such a softie, Morrison? Fine. I'll get you the materials. But you owe me big time. Put it on my tab. 2 weeks later, an unmarked cargo pod arrived at the Pioneer's location. Inside were the exotic matter samples Veyla needed, along with advanced shielding components and power cores that were technically classified. Danny helped her unload everything, his eyes wide with excitement. Dr. Kass, with this equipment, we could build something serious. That is exactly what I intend to do, Veyla said. She worked day and night for the next month. The crew helped however they could, even though most of them did not understand the science. They trusted her vision. Jake had to order her to sleep and eat, and even then she often snuck back to the lab after a few hours. The dimensional fold generator slowly took shape. It was beautiful in its complexity, a web of exotic matter containment fields and quantum processors that could calculate space-time variations in real time. When it was finally complete, Veyla stood back and looked at her creation with a mixture of pride and terror. It is ready, she told Jake. He called a meeting in the ship's common area. The entire crew gathered, about 15 people in total. They looked at Veyla with expectant faces. Dr. Kass has finished the dimensional fold generator, Jake announced. If her theories are correct, this device will allow us to travel 50 light-years instantaneously. A journey that normally takes weeks will happen in seconds. And if the theories are wrong? Amy asked quietly. Veyla took a deep breath. If I have made a mistake in the calculations, the dimensional fold could destabilize. Best case, nothing happens and the device simply fails. Worst case, the fold creates a spatial distortion that tears the ship apart. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the stakes. They could die testing this. I am not asking anyone to risk their lives for my research, Veyla continued. Captain Morrison, you could drop me at the nearest station with my equipment. I could test it on a remote drone instead. Jake shook his head. That's not how we do things on the Pioneer. We're a team. If this works, we all share the success. If it fails, we face that together too. He looked around at his crew. But this has to be a choice. I won't order anyone to stay for this test. If you want to transfer off the ship, now's the time. No judgment, no questions asked. The crew looked at each other. Then Danny stood up. I'm staying. This is too cool to miss. Amy stood next. I'm in. One by one, every crew member stood. Not a single person chose to leave. Veyla felt her throat tighten with emotion. These humans, these supposedly primitive beings that the galaxy looked down on, were willing to risk their lives for her dream. Thank you, she said quietly. All of you. I will not let you down. But as they prepared for the test, Veyla could not shake her fear. What if she was wrong? What if the calculations had some flaw she could not see? She had checked them 1,000 times, but doubt gnawed at her. Jake found her in the lab the night before the test, staring at her equations on the screen. Second thoughts? He asked. Many thoughts, Veyla admitted. Jake, if this goes wrong, it is my fault. All these lives, your crew who trusted me. Stop, Jake said gently. You've done everything right. You've checked every calculation, run every simulation. At some point, you have to trust yourself. And we trust you. That's what matters. The coalition said I was a fraud. What if they were right? Jake sat down beside her. You want to know what I think? I think the coalition got comfortable. They stopped asking what if and started saying we know. But science is not about knowing everything. It is about asking questions and testing answers. You are doing real science, Veyla. They forgot how. He stood up and put a hand on her shoulder. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we either make history or we learn something new. Either way, it is worth trying. After he left, Veyla sat alone in the quiet lab. She thought about her journey, from respected scientist to outcast to this moment. Everything had led here. All the rejection, all the pain, all the desperate hoping. Tomorrow would prove whether it had all meant something. She pulled up her calculations one last time, checking every number, every formula, every assumption. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe. Not because she was certain of success, but because these humans had taught her something the galaxy had tried to beat out of her. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is try, even when failure might destroy you. Tomorrow they would find out if courage was enough. The Pioneer traveled to an uninhabited star system for the test. Jake had chosen the location carefully, far from any stations or shipping lanes. If something went catastrophically wrong, at least they would not endanger anyone else. Veyla sat at her station on the bridge, the dimensional fold generator's controls in front of her. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran through the final checklist. Behind her, the crew worked at their stations with quiet focus. No one spoke. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. All stations report ready, Amy said from the navigation console. Engineering shows green across the board. Danny added from below decks. Power cores at maximum capacity. Exotic matter containment is stable. Jake sat in the captain's chair, his face calm despite what they were about to attempt. Veyla, whenever you're ready. Veyla took a deep breath. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. Her exile from her homeworld, the endless rejections, the months of cleaning waste recyclers, meeting Jake, the rescue that proved thinking differently could save lives. And now this, the chance to prove her life's work. Initializing dimensional fold generator, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Her fingers moved across the controls, activating systems in the precise sequence she had calculated. The exotic matter began to resonate, creating ripples in the fabric of spacetime itself. Energy readings spiked across every monitor. Dimensional field forming, she reported. Containment holding steady. On the view screen, space itself began to change. A shimmer appeared in the void, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. But this was not heat. This was reality bending, folding in on itself in ways that should not be possible. Field strength at 40%, Veyla said. Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. 50%. 60%. Alarms began to sound. Not critical failures, but warnings that the ship was experiencing forces it was never designed to handle. The hull groaned softly, protesting the stress being placed on it. Hull integrity holding, Amy called out, though her voice was tight. But we're at 92% of maximum stress tolerance. Almost there, Veyla said. 70%. 80%. The dimensional fold grew stronger, more visible. It looked like a tear in reality itself, edges shimmering with impossible colors. Veyla had seen this in her simulations 1,000 times, but seeing it in reality was something else entirely. Beautiful and terrifying. 90%. 95%. For a moment, nothing happened. The field hung there at 95%, stable but incomplete. Veyla's breath caught. Was this as far as it would go? Was 95% not enough? Then the numbers ticked upward. 96, 97, 98. Field at 100%, Veyla announced. The dimensional fold is stable and ready. Jake leaned forward in his chair. Target coordinates set? Yes, 50 light-years from our current position. The fold will take us directly to the Kepler 442 system. Then let's make history. Engage the fold. Veyla's finger hovered over the final activation control. This was it. The moment of truth. Everything she had worked for, everything she had suffered through, all came down to this one decision. She pressed the button. Reality twisted. For one impossible instant, Veyla existed in two places at once. She was on the bridge of the Pioneer, and she was also everywhere and nowhere, suspended in a space between dimensions where the normal rules of physics did not apply. She saw the universe from angles that should not exist, perceived time as something malleable and strange. Then, just as quickly, reality snapped back. The view screen showed different stars. They were no longer in the uninhabited system. The navigation computer beeped as it analyzed their new position. Position confirmed, Amy said, her voice filled with awe. We are in the Kepler 442 system, 50 light-years from where we started. Transit time, 2.3 seconds. The bridge exploded with cheers. Danny's voice came over the comm from engineering, whooping with joy. Crew members hugged each other, laughed, shouted in celebration. They had done it. The impossible had become possible. Veyla sat frozen at her station, tears streaming down her face. It had worked. Her theory, her calculations, her life's work. It had worked. Jake walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. You did it. You just changed the galaxy. We did it, Veyla corrected, looking up at him. Your crew. Your belief. I could not have done this alone. Maybe not, Jake said with a smile. But you're the one who figured out how to fold space. That's all you. The celebration continued for several minutes before Amy's voice cut through the noise. Captain, I'm detecting multiple incoming ships. Coalition signatures. It's a fleet. The mood on the bridge shifted instantly. Jake returned to his chair. How many ships? 12 vessels, led by a Corathi heavy cruiser. They're hailing us. It's Admiral Torvin Rax. Jake and Veyla exchanged looks. They both knew that name. Admiral Rax had been building a case against the Pioneer for months, waiting for an excuse to shut them down permanently. Put him through, Jake said. The view screen changed to show a Corathi officer with a rigid posture and cold, mechanical features. Captain Morrison, you are ordered to stand down and prepare to be boarded. Our sensors detected an unauthorized energy signature from your location. You have violated multiple research protocols and... He stopped mid-sentence as his tactical officer whispered something to him. His mechanical face could not show emotion, but his voice changed. You are in the Kepler 442 system. How did you get here? You were in the frontier sector minutes ago. Dimensional fold travel, Jake said calmly. We just proved it works. Impossible, Admiral Rax said flatly. No ship can travel 50 light-years instantaneously. Your navigation computer must be malfunctioning. Check your own sensors, Jake replied. Review your tracking data. We were in the frontier sector and now we're here. There's only one explanation. There was a long silence as Admiral Rax consulted with his officers. Veyla could imagine the panic on that bridge as they tried to explain what their instruments were telling them. Finally, Admiral Rax spoke again. Even if what you claim is true, you have conducted illegal experiments with dangerous technology. Your ship will be impounded and your crew detained pending investigation. I don't think so, Jake said. He pressed a control on his chair. I'm broadcasting our complete sensor logs, including full data on the dimensional fold and the mathematics behind it. I'm sending this to every major news network, every scientific institution, and every government in the coalition. Right now, millions of beings are learning that dimensional fold travel is possible. Admiral Rax's voice took on a sharp edge. You have no authority to release classified research data. It's not classified. It's Dr. Veyla Kass's original research, which your people rejected years ago. She developed this technology independently, with no coalition funding or resources, which means she owns it, and she's chosen to share it freely with the galaxy. Veyla nodded, confirming Jake's statement. She had made that decision during the celebration. This discovery was too important to be locked away or controlled by bureaucrats who had already proven they could not recognize revolutionary ideas when presented with them. The communication from Admiral Rax cut off abruptly. For a moment, there was silence on the bridge. Then Amy spoke up. "Captain, I'm receiving thousands of incoming messages. News agencies, governments, scientific institutions. Everyone wants to know more about the dimensional fold. And I'm getting a priority message from the Zenthari Scientific Assembly," another crew member added. "They're requesting an immediate meeting with Dr. Kass." Veyla felt a cold sensation in her chest. The same people who had exiled her now wanted to talk. She could imagine why. They were facing humiliation. Their greatest scientific breakthrough had come from the researcher they had cast out, working with the primitive humans they all looked down on. "Tell them I'm busy," Veyla said quietly. Jake smiled. "You heard the doctor. She's busy." Over the next hour, the situation became clearer. The coalition could not suppress what had happened. The evidence was too strong, spread too widely. Ships across the galaxy were detecting the residual dimensional distortion from the Pioneer's jump. The mathematics checked out. The impossible had undeniably occurred. Admiral Rax tried one more time to assert control. "Captain Morrison, regardless of your discovery, you still face charges for the violations during the rescue operation and—" "Admiral," Jake interrupted, "I'm going to save us both some time. You can try to arrest me, charge me, throw me in prison. But right now, I'm the captain of the only ship in the galaxy with working dimensional fold technology. A technology that will revolutionize travel, trade, exploration, and defense. Every government out there is going to want access to this. And they're going to want to stay on my good side to get it." He leaned back in his chair. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop all charges against me and my crew. You're going to formally restore Dr. Kass's credentials and apologize for her exile. And in return, we'll work with the coalition to share this technology properly, under reasonable terms. Or you can be difficult, and we'll take our discovery to someone who appreciates it more." It was a gamble, but Jake had read the situation correctly. The coalition needed the Pioneer more than the Pioneer needed the coalition right now. Admiral Rax was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice that suggested he was being overruled by his own superiors, he said, "The Coalition Council has authorized me to negotiate terms. Stand by for further communication." The transmission ended. The bridge crew erupted in cheers again, but Veyla felt oddly quiet. She had won. After all these years, she had finally won. But the victory felt strange, almost hollow. Jake noticed her expression. "You okay?" "I spent so long trying to convince them I was right," Veyla said. "I wanted them to believe in me, to see my value. But now that they do, I realize something. I don't need their approval anymore. I already have something better." "What's that?" Jake asked. Veyla looked around the bridge at the crew that had supported her, believed in her, and risked everything to help her prove her theories. "I have people who trusted me even when I had nothing to show them. That is worth more than any credentials or recognition." 3 days later, Veyla stood before the Galactic Coalition Council. The chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all waiting to hear her speak. It was very different from the last time she had stood before such an assembly. She explained the dimensional fold technology in detail, answered questions from scientists who had dismissed her years ago, and outlined how the discovery would change galactic civilization. She was professional, thorough, and brilliant. But when the Zenthari representative stood to offer her a full restoration of her position and a formal apology from the Scientific Assembly, Veyla surprised everyone. "I appreciate the offer," she said, "but I decline. I am the science officer of the Pioneer now. That is where I belong." The representative looked shocked. "Dr. Kass, we are offering you the highest position in Zenthari science. Resources beyond measure. Recognition as one of the greatest minds of our generation. And 5 years ago, I would have given anything for that," Veyla said. "But I have learned something important. Great discoveries do not come from comfortable laboratories or prestigious positions. They come from taking risks, challenging assumptions, and working with people brave enough to try the impossible. The humans taught me that. and I will not abandon them now that success has arrived. She looked directly at the Zenthari representative. If you truly wish to make amends, then change. Stop rejecting ideas because they are unconventional. Stop exiling scientists who think differently. Support the dreamers, the risk-takers, the ones who ask uncomfortable questions. That is how progress happens. The chamber was silent when she finished. Then, slowly, beings from dozens of species began to applaud. It started quiet, then grew louder until the entire chamber was filled with the sound. Veyla returned to the Pioneer that evening. Jake was waiting at the airlock with the crew. They had watched her speech on the ship's monitors. That was quite a statement, Jake said. You know you just turned down one of the most powerful positions in the galaxy? I know, Veyla said, but I made the right choice. I would rather explore the universe with people who believe in me than sit in a laboratory with people who only believe in my results. Danny stepped forward with a bottle of something that looked suspiciously like human champagne. Then let's celebrate properly. To Dr. Kass, who just proved that one person with a good idea and the courage to pursue it can change the entire galaxy. They toasted and drank and talked late into the night. Through the view screen, stars shone bright against the darkness. But they were not so far away anymore. With the dimensional fold drive, the entire galaxy had suddenly become smaller, more accessible. Jake found Veyla looking out at the stars later that night. Thinking about what comes next? He asked. Yes, Veyla said. There is so much more to discover. The dimensional fold is just the beginning. There are other theories I want to test, other impossible things that might be possible. Sounds like you're going to keep us busy. Is that acceptable, Captain? Jake smiled. Absolutely. The Pioneer was built for exploration. And now we can explore farther than anyone ever dreamed. I can't think of a better use of our time. He paused, then added, You know what I think made the difference? What allowed you to succeed where the Coalition's best minds failed? What? Veyla asked. You were willing to be wrong. The Coalition scientists were so invested in being right, in protecting their reputations, that they could not take real risks. But you had nothing to lose. That freedom let you explore ideas that no one else would touch. Veyla considered this. Perhaps, or perhaps it was simply that I found people who were willing to believe in an outcast. People who judged ideas on their merit, not on who presented them. Maybe it was both, Jake said. Either way, I'm glad you ended up on my ship. Even if you did almost get us blown up a few times. Veyla laughed, a sound that felt natural now, easy. So different from the broken person she had been just months ago. I make no promises about the future. Science is unpredictable. That's what makes it fun. The Pioneer departed the Coalition capital world the next morning. They had a new mission, mapping unexplored regions of the galaxy using the dimensional fold drive. Regions that were too far away for conventional ships, but now within reach. As they prepared to make their first jump, Veyla sat at her station and thought about her journey. From rejection to redemption, from outcast to pioneer. All because one human captain had been willing to break the rules and give her a chance. Ready, Dr. Kass? Jake asked from the captain's chair. Ready, Captain, Veyla replied. Then take us somewhere no one has ever been. Veyla activated the dimensional fold generator. Reality bent, twisted, and folded. The Pioneer disappeared from known space in an instant, carrying its crew into the unknown. Behind them, the galaxy was already changing. Scientists were reevaluating old assumptions. Engineers were designing new ships. Governments were redrawing maps of what was possible. But on the Pioneer, none of that mattered right now. They had stars to explore, discoveries to make, and a universe full of impossible things waiting to be proven possible. Veyla had spent years trying to convince the galaxy she was right. In the end, she had done something better. She had shown them that the greatest breakthroughs come not from those who follow all the rules, but from those brave enough to break them when breaking them saves lives, changes minds, and opens new frontiers. The galaxy had rejected her, but a human had believed in her, and together they had made the impossible real.